Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. My guest today is Asafu Thomas, born in Liberia, raised in the USA, and now currently residing in Tanzania. This episode is a little bit different as we found out the unique story of Asafu's root of the science. We learned that he actually started out as a biology major and later switched to economics and finance. He went on to work in the digital marketing space where he actively started thinking about starting his own business. He started various companies on his journey as an entrepreneur, one of those being Naya-Labs, a company outsourcing development to engineers on the African continent where he is the CEO. He tells us more about the work and how this was the genesis for him to be a co-founder for another company called Built in Africa. Started this year, it's a platform to connect trailblazers of African diaspora through the unifying language of tech. We found out more about Built in Africa's work and the various projects that they're involved in and how you can be involved. Plus, we learn about some of their visions that they have for the future. Tune in for this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, Asafu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so excited to have you. It's been a long time coming. I think we've been trying to coordinate our schedules for this meeting to happen.
Absolutely. But in the end, we got it done and we're here. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So now, please just give us an introduction in terms of who is Asafu, where you're from, where you're currently based, and what are you currently doing?
Sure. So my name is Asafu Thomas. I was born in Liberia and I raised in the U.S. My family left Liberia during one of the civil wars in Liberia and came to the U.S. to start a new life. So being, I went to school in the States. I worked in the States, and now I'm currently based in Tanzania, but I'm actually on a journey of exploring a lot of countries across the continent, and just to spread that message of Built in Africa and technology, connecting engineers with the projects in the U.S.
Fantastic. You've touched on something really exciting before we get into exactly what you do with Built in Africa. You said that you've been traveling some of the many amazing countries here in Africa. If you can you tell me some of your favorite places and why? I know it's a toughie.
It is. Okay, so one of my first loves is Ghana because when I first started going back to the continent, it was Ghana, and it just automatically felt like home. The food, it's West Africa, so the food is similar to what I'm used to in Liberia. The people are just the most amazing people. And so Ghana feels like home to me. And I'm actually like an adopted Ghanaian son. So I definitely like that. But outside of Ghana, I love Kenya, I love Tanzania, Ethiopia, the countries. The beautiful thing about the African continent is that there's so many different cultures, and I appreciate the unique things that we have on the continent. I think that really makes it beautiful.
Lovely. You should come down south. Come visit us down south.
Absolutely. I hear it's fabulous. I hear it's beautiful there.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
That's definitely on the list.
Yeah, definitely. Start off in Malawi, South Africa, down here. Nice. You should come through. But that's fantastic.
Yeah. So far, the furthest south I've been is Zambia.
Okay, you were
So,
close enough though. You were almost there. You're almost there. No, fantastic. Okay, so you spoke about how your family immigrated from Liberia to the US, right?
Yes.
How was that transition? Was it because you were young? Maybe you didn't feel it, but how was that?
So I was really young. So how it actually turned out is my mother came first, and then she sent for me when I was about 3 years old. So for the first three years of my life, I was raised by my aunt and my uncle, and then I kind of met my mother at the age of 3. And we were raised in, at the time, in Virginia, which is in Virginia, near the south of the U.S. The experience as a child, there are not really many memories. I think things were very smooth. What I started to realize, though, is I grew up in two worlds. Living in the U.S. I grew up in a Liberian household, so like an African household, and then I grew up, in America. And I think it was an experience that has really allowed me to be the person I am today in the way that I think, how I look at building bridges between, African American people and African people on the continent, because obviously the cultures are vastly different, and there's a lot of differences that I think throughout time that has created kind of a void between the two groups, even though I believe we're the same people, but those cultural differences have made it kind of different, kind of hard to connect. And so I see myself, or I'm working towards being more of that bridge for connecting, people of African descent back to the continent by any means we can.
That's very true. I think there is that little bit of a divide. It's sad, really, because we are all one people. But I think it's imperative that there are people like yourself who are trying to bring us all together. And I think one of the ways that you're doing that, you call yourself actually a serial entrepreneur, right? So we're just going to jump ahead now. Can you tell us how did you get into that space of being an entrepreneur? What were some of those influences?
Sure. Entrepreneurship was definitely a journey for me. You started the question talking about connecting people, and I've always looked at the entrepreneurial pursuits that I get involved in to have some sort of social impact, specifically for African people. And so when I think of what I like to do as an entrepreneur, it's got to involve economic impact for the communities that not just for myself, but the community that I represent, And so for me, the journey started with, it started out not knowing what I wanted to do at all. So I went into, undergrad as a as a biology major, because like all young African, students, their parents want them to go and be a doctor, a doctor or a lawyer. And, so I went in as a biology major, but I really didn't love it at all. I was good at it, but it wasn't something I really wanted to do. And so I stumbled through until my junior year is when I switched to economics. And so I figured, all right, if I don't know what I want to do yet, let me go into something related to finance and business and economics, because you can always get involved in some sort of company with that type of insight. So I went to economics, and the school I went to, you could create your own major. So the major I created involved economics, business, marketing, and finance. Those were the types of classes that I was taking. And my first focus was going and becoming a stockbroker. I was enamored by the movie Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
And all those like stockbroker movies. So I thought it was cool. They make a lot of money. They drive nice cars, and so I was like, all right, let me look at being a stockbroker. And so I interned. The best thing you can do if you're not sure what you want to do is kind of either intern in that space or find a way to get close to working in that space, because you'll learn really the ins and outs. And I interned as a broker, and I realized the experience wasn't for me. I saw it as a glorified sales position. Okay. Pushing product as opposed to advising. And so I eventually chose a different route. So I stayed in the finance world for about 4 years, though, before just making a change. I wanted a change of career and moved into the digital marketing space. And really, that digital marketing space is when I started thinking about, all right, how to create my own business. It was something, even when I was a financial advisor, creating my own business is something that I wanted to do, but I just didn't know the steps that I should take, or I didn't have the confidence at the time to go out and just step out on that ledge and do it myself. And so I worked for great companies throughout the year. Throughout the years, I learned a lot, and I was able to identify something in the digital marketing space that I could do well, and create value, and make a living at. And that was the entree into my first company, which was called DataWorks.
Oh, fantastic! I really love how you said that you dipped your feet in, and then you're like, this is not for me. Because sometimes we make rash decisions without really trying it out first. Although I suppose, to be fair, some people don't have the privilege to try something and then to stop. But I think it's really great that you were able to see what is not for you. So, you said that you started this one, DataWorks. How did that go? I know, because that was not the only company that you started, hence serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What then after that?
Yeah, so DataWorks was my first company, and it actually started off pretty well, like compared to some of my other ventures. The thing about DataWorks is I came into that company, or I started that company after being fired from the job that I was working at before. Okay. There were some changes in the economy at that time, and the company I was working with was moving in a different direction, and they let a lot of people go. And I was able to negotiate, to take on a few clients with me, the clients that I was working with while I was there. And through that experience, I was able to walk out day one and have some key clients that I started my company with. So it was a kind of a soft landing. Now, beyond starting a company, you have to create something that's sustainable, and that's what I had to learn. My first 3 years in business, I had to really learn how to transition from being a business development or salesperson to becoming a business owner or an entrepreneur. And so it was, that was the real learning experiences, and a lot of the trials and tribulations that, I went through and dealt with. But that experience definitely has made me a better businessman today. And I always look back on that and thankful for those times.
I think the way that you explain it it's also like how if you fail, you have to keep on getting up. I mean, it's not easy, but I think, like you say, that you learn those type of different lessons in the process. And another one of your ventures is Naya-Labs, a company that is outsourcing development work to engineers on the continent, the African continent. Can you tell us more about that venture?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I exited my first company, DataWorks, so I was able to sell that company, move, and then looking at the things I wanted to do. I remembered during that company, I leveraged a lot of technology help overseas.
Okay.
And I always looked towards Africa when hiring engineers overseas. And so in markets like Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, I was looking, as opposed to India and Eastern Europe, I was looking at, where I could hire those types of engineers. And it wasn't easy. I didn't see a lot of resources or a lot of companies available where there's African devs and working on projects where I was in the US. And so I looked at that opportunity and I said, there's something that I've had it was a pain point for me. I know there are a lot of other non-technical founders out there. And so Naya-Labs was the venture that I chose to move into next. And for me, it was an amazing experience. It goes back to what I was talking about when I said it's about making a social impact. It wasn't, Naya-Labs is not just about creating a successful business, although that's our main objective. But I look at socially, economically, the opportunities we can create for those engineers who, are highly talented. If we could create opportunities for them to create, to have jobs and then maybe go on to now have money to create their own businesses and hire other people, it just creates a really great cycle that I like to see.
That's such fantastic work. I commend you for that because, like you said, I think there's a lot of amazing engineers right here on the continent who are qualified, but it just so happens that possibly here the opportunities are few, and it's also tough to get opportunities being overseas because already you are an international or like a foreigner, and there's a lot of paperwork. So I think it's really great that you're trying to bridge that divide. I think you also spoke about that earlier, that's what you also aim to do
right
with the work that you do. So it's quite beautiful that it's like a turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many early, startups, early stage companies, and also these companies, a lot of them founded by African Americans. And so as opposed to these companies outsourcing to India and other markets like Eastern Europe, which are good markets, but they can work with, engineers at the same, affordable rates. They can find engineers in Africa to accomplish what they're looking to accomplish in their technology. So
that's fantastic. And then just further, as you told your resume, it's a pretty expansive one. But you are also part of this incredible team called Built in Africa, and that's the main reason why we connected. A platform to connect trailblazers of the African diaspora through unifying the language of tech. I suppose this is kind of linking almost to what you're speaking about. It's a nice little transition. Can you tell us more about what Built in Africa is all about? The story behind it, the genesis.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something there about tech being a unifying language. It definitely is. It's, again, like with technology, doesn't matter where you're from in the world. If you can code well, you can get it done. You can work on any type of project. It doesn't matter your color, your gender, any of that. Your stuff doesn't matter. And I think that's what's so exciting about what's happening in the technology revolution, where everybody's moving everything is moving towards technology. And, all of us as human beings are going to have some level of insight or familiarity with technology and what's happening, because the world is moving towards that. When it came to Built in Africa, Naya-Labs. Built in Africa actually stemmed off of my initial experiences at Naya-Labs. When I started the company, it was about creating awareness. I said to myself, okay, you've identified this, you've experienced this pain point, you've identified a solution, but how many other entrepreneurs or businesses, have this pain point, but don't really know where to go if they want to hire an African engineer, or they don't even know what's happening on the African continent when it comes to technology. And so creating awareness was the first idea. And I was connected already to this brilliant writer named Nathan. He's one of my partners in Built in Africa. And I was connected to him through some of the work that he's done on other projects over the years. And so I approached him and posed the idea of, creating creating a platform where we could just simply highlight what's happening in Africa around technology. That's all. We just wanted to tell specifically people in the U.S., people that look like us specifically, what's happening in Africa, all over the continent when it comes to technology. And we thought what that would do is create the awareness and open people's eyes to the fact that, wow, there's a lot happening there. There's a lot of talented engineers. And Nathan was already connected with a brilliant marketer and designer, our other partner, Danny. And so we all kind of came together and put Built in Africa together in sort of that way to build awareness and to be that bridge, unifying the diaspora and the technology and engineers on the continent.
That sounds amazing. So when did this officially start, and how long has it been? How long have you guys been working on this?
Built in Africa is only this year. We started earlier this year, and it's so the initial launch was, I believe, in February, and we started purely. Our focus has been about creating great content. So we started first with just written interviews, where we'd interview engineers, designers, entrepreneurs in tech, and then we'd write articles on them. And then we've transitioned to adding video interviews. We transitioned to adding in audio. We just want to create a space where all of that information is in one place for people to consume. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I really love what you're doing. Like you said, that it's just fantastic, and the team. Especially like you've only just started. So what is the goal? Like, what is the dream?
I really see Built in Africa. I would love to create a yearly. I see kind of a yearly conference where we're able to highlight, the brilliant and the great, amazing things happening on the African continent around technology. So. The goal is to just continue to build the media platform and continue to create unique content around technology in Africa. And as long as we can continue to span in that way, the natural transition, we feel, is creating a broader and large conference on the continent every year, where we're able to showcase these technologies in person and bring people from all over the world together in one place in a different country every year.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And hopefully when the world is open, that's a new term now. When the world is open, I think it'll be quite fantastic to do that. So in terms of the demographics, are we speaking about, can young people be featured in this type of thing? Are we talking about, people who are a bit older, like, who gets featured?
Good question. Yeah, we really like to go across, like in terms of demographics. We were very conscious of not only profiling the big countries that everyone hears about: South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana. We wanted to make sure we were in North Africa. We were in, across West Africa, Senegal. We want to make sure we were in across East Africa and some of the regions where you don't hear what's going on a lot. And we also approach that from an age standpoint and, obviously gender standpoint as well. We wanted to make sure the voice, it was a unified voice from a lot of different pockets of the continent. Just so people can start to see that, although there's amazing things happening and there's unique subtleties, differences, so a lot of times when people say Africa, we think about it as one place, but there's that uniqueness of every different region really makes us valuable. That's the real value of what we are on the continent. And so we want that to come through in the content that we're putting forth in Built in Africa. So we certainly go across different age ranges, different countries, different, all over to make sure we're accomplishing that vision.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very important about how when people think Africa, they think it's one country, but like you said, it's 54 countries. And I think the beauty of it also is that sometimes technology can also be kind of region specific. So just because like a technology that's built, for example, a person, an engineer who built it is obviously a problem that's being faced in their particular region, be it West Africa. Right. And maybe in South Africa, that is not really a problem. And I think that's quite beautiful to kind of showcase that. Or maybe a person thinks that this technology is only good in Egypt, but actually it can be transcended and somebody in Zimbabwe can actually apply it. And I think that's really, really beautiful that you're creating that space. And I think, like you said, when you do reach that level of creating these conferences and having that different dialogue of all of these amazing engineers, I think so many beautiful things will birth from that, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So apart from you mentioned about some of the videos and the audios, what other projects is Built in Africa involved in?
So right now, that's our focus. We started this year, and so creating content is what we're all about. We do have merchandise, like hoodies, T-shirts that we're putting out there. We also have we've created a space on the platform to find job opportunities for engineers. So there are a lot of employers based in the U.S. That will come to the platform looking for engineers. So they'll either, and I actually, for Naya-Labs, we hire sometimes when we have specific projects, we're hiring specifically from that platform or from the people reading the content on that platform. So those are some of the things that we're working on right now. But the main focus is creating great content and continue to expand in that realm.
Oh, fantastic. So just as we slowly about to wrap up, given the work that you've done with Naya-Labs and Built in Africa, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, how do you think Africans can ensure that we don't get left behind in this, revolution, the tech revolution? I mean, it's great. We keep saying that 5G, for example, is here. Is it really here for everybody in Africa? So what do you think needs to happen that we don't get left behind?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think from the standpoint of being left behind, I think there's a lot of things so I travel the continent. In some countries, there's something that I noticed. I noticed that there's that divide where the majority of people, maybe let's take smartphones, for example. I know in like Tanzania, for example, where I'm at currently, a lot of people don't actually have a smartphone. They have mobile's huge, but they don't have a smartphone. And so if you're trying to introduce technology, let's say in the Western world, in other regions, you're only focusing on one section of the population, the people with smartphones, which is usually in a lot of countries that I've been to, which is usually probably the 10% of that whole population. So that's that whole 90-80% of the people that you're missing out on. So I really think for us not to get left behind, while we have to stay up to date on the latest technology and what's happening, we have to find a way to make sure that technology can be consumed majority of the people, not just the small 10%. And we need to create ways where the majority of people can benefit from that technology revolution and benefit from what's happening there. So that's the way I feel we don't get left behind by.
That's very important, and you bring in a really good point that we keep talking about. Like you said, not everybody has access to all of the smartphones and everything being positioned to smartphones. So a lot of people get left behind, and I hope through the work of some of the people maybe who you feature in Built in Africa, hopefully they're thinking about solving these type of problems, because sometimes we do need African people to solve African problems, because I don't think other people would think about it otherwise. So it's pretty exciting to see what other people think about in terms of solving those problems. And that's pretty exciting. And just to wrap it up, Asafu, it's been a really great interview. But your story is pretty unique in terms of the people who are interviewed on the show, right? It usually goes like we're talking about people specifically who are in sciences directly, but you tried, and then you're like, no, it's not for me. So somebody who's listening, because you've got a wide variety of people, not only in STEM, what advice would you give to them about, especially given how you've come sort of full circle in your journey about navigating failures, for example, or as a whole, or even starting something new? Your final piece.
So, that's a great question. So I look at where I am now in my career, and it's definitely not where I envisioned I'd be, and I mean in a good way. If you were to tell me 10 years ago that I'd be working in tech, I'd be like, no, you're crazy. I was totally a non-technical person.
Yeah.
But what I think and probably this is my superpower, but what I think I've been good at is I'm always good at adapting, or not being afraid to go into something new, and whether I stumble, but also learn along the way. And I think we have to, people going into not just STEM, but going into any different career, they need to be. I think we're always approaching things as human beings. We're approaching things like, all right, I have to go into this and either see immediate success, or I have to immediately love what I'm doing. And I think, a lot of times the passion comes over time from, it comes from your ability to learn, the different skill sets within that field, and eventually take your time to do it. So not being afraid to stumble sometimes and learn from the mistakes is important. And I've been able to do that throughout my career and end up in a space that I really love, making impact that I'm really proud of, because I wasn't afraid to jump into tech, and I wasn't afraid to stumble in the beginning, and even realize things that I wasn't good at, and outsource for those things that I wasn't good at. Yeah. So that's the advice I would give.
That's fantastic advice. I think that adaptability is really, really good. And with the way that the world is changing nowadays, it's changing so instantly. So, you kind of have to move with the flow. And it's really great that you stressed that with that. And your journey was unique, but I'm so glad that you found a place where you are making all of this important impact. And I think this is only the beginning. We're going to hear so much more about you and also specifically about Built in Africa. And I'm pretty excited to hear more, especially about this conference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about you as well. But I appreciate this opportunity to speak on your podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
The pleasure is mine. And to everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Sounds podcast with your girl, Anthony. Until next time, goodbye.